Hello, I'm Matt.
And I'm McKinley.
We are the father-son duo behind History Dispatches,
the daily podcast that uncovers the weird, obscure, and fantastic tales from the past.
From lobotomies to the Library of Alexandria,
to London's killer fog and America's missing nukes.
We've got bandits and battles,
plus Queen Victoria's royal rat catcher,
and the Great Emu War,
and the only time French, German, and American soldiers fought alongside each other in World War II.
Subscribe to History Dispatches wherever you like to listen.
Everyone asks me, what's your favorite shipwreck? And it's always the next one that we're working on.
Tamara Thomsen's got a fabulous job. She's a maritime archaeologist with the Wisconsin Historical Society, and she investigates newly discovered shipwrecks on the bottoms of the Great Lakes, specifically the two that border Wisconsin, Lake Superior and Lake Michigan.
I have been working on a shipwreck that was just discovered this summer, which is called the F.J. King.
Researchers and citizen scientists led the search.
They wanted to see if they could locate the remains of the vessel, which had become practically a ghost ship. It had disappeared for nearly 140 years, despite fishermen saying where they knew it was and the lighthouse keeper reporting that it was within the shipping lane. So they put together a plan for where they were going to search. They conducted the archival research.
And then they boarded a boat.
They were out there for maybe less than 2 hours. And this shipwreck that had not been found, despite a lot of searches being made for it, they saw it crawl across the screen of their sonar. They reported that to our office, and then we put a small team together to go look at it. We try to do what's called a photogrammetry model. So we put a diver down with a scooter, a diver propulsion vehicle, with a GoPro on the front and lights. And then he goes back and forth over the shipwreck and photographs it at multiple angles for about 25 or 30 minutes.
Wow.
And then that goes into a program where he can create a 3D model. When my buddy and I were down there, we tried to get diagnostic information to be able to positively identify the ship, look for any kind of cultural items, things that were left by the crew, any remnants of the cargo, and try to do an assessment for listing to the National Register of Historic Places. I mean, it's a great honor for shipwrecks, but it also enacts other parts of the law which protect the shipwreck.
So out of the depths, you find these remarkable ships from the past that have been hidden from view for decades.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing that somebody pays me to do this job. It's very exciting and I feel very privileged. But to correct that a little bit, we don't look for shipwrecks. Our office is still in a backlogged situation. We've been around since 1988. That's when the state founded our program. And we're still trying to catch up with all the shipwrecks that have been discovered. If we look at just Wisconsin alone in our waters, there's more than 780 vessels that have been reported lost here. And of those, we just know where a little over 300 are located. And every year there's more and more that are being found. And they're being found at a faster rate because of a number of things. Increased press and visibility and awareness by the public, access to technology, certainly. But also, we have 3 national marine sanctuaries that are here in the Great Lakes now. People believe that these resources are important places to allow that storytelling to happen.
With the F.J. King, when a ship like that presents itself, what kinds of feelings come up for you?
I want to understand what happened in the last moments of the ship.
From Smithsonian Magazine and PRX Productions, this is There's More to That, the show that dives deep to find hidden treasures and stories. I'm Ari Daniel. This is the second of 2 parts about shipwrecks on the Great Lakes. In this episode, what we can learn from thousands of years of maritime disasters in this part of the world, plus how to dress when diving for these wrecks. Stay tuned. Our last episode was about the Edmund Fitzgerald, And I understand that you get a lot of questions about that ship. Why do you think people are so fixated on that particular vessel and its fate all these years later?
Well, you've heard the song, right?
Yes. Tamara is referring to the famous Gordon Lightfoot ballad from 1976 that memorializes the tragic ending of this ship and its crew.
The captain wired in, he had water coming in, and the good ship and crew was in peril. And later that night, when his lights went out of sight, came the wreck of the Edwin Fitzgerald.
Yeah, not all shipwrecks get songs, and it's a pretty good song, you know. I think it made number 2 on the hit list of the day. The other thing is that it was 1975, which to me feels like yesterday.
How?
Because it doesn't seem that long ago. Most of what I work on are ships from the mid 1800s. So 1975 is,
a youngin'.
much younger. And the families still live in the communities. There were whole communities that were decimated from the loss of fathers and sons and uncles that worked on these ships. I give a lot of presentations out in communities, and it's pretty regular that people will come up and say, oh yeah, my grandfather was lost on the Edmund Fitzgerald, and everyone seems to have some sort of tie. So it's still very close to home.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it deserves its outsized reputation?
What I think is unfair is that we haven't been able to study exactly why the ship went down. There's a lot of conjecture around that. It was the storm that sank the ship, but was it, loose plates? Was it fast welding? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of questions. And the more time that we spend with the story, and with the little information that we did get from the 4 major expeditions out to the shipwreck, the more questions that come to mind. And I think it would be really interesting, especially given that it's in the 50th year since it sank, to invest in understanding why exactly the ship went down, and not just end it and say, oh, because it's a grave site and we need to be respectful of that. We also want to be able to tell the true story.
So the Edmund Fitzgerald is perhaps one of the most famous vessels that have sunk in the Great Lakes. But can you put that ship into context in terms of the Great Lakes as a final resting place for so many different ships, and over what period of time?
The earliest shipwreck on the Great Lakes is one called the Griffin. It was lost in 1679, I believe. This is from the LaSalle expedition, which came here, dropped off explorers, picked up a load of furs, and started heading back. It was last seen passing through the Rock Island Passage. It was reported to have been seen there by Native Americans passing that point, and then never seen again. And that's probably the holy grail of shipwrecks here on the Great Lakes. And if someone found that, wow, that would be an awesome story.
Tamara says it's hard to know just how many ships, not to mention lives and stories, are submerged beneath the waters of the Great Lakes.
Everyone guesses around this. I've heard 6,000, 10,000 ships on the Great Lakes.
Wow.
There's a lot of research that still could be done to get more exacting in those numbers, but again, I think our estimate is actually more likely around the 6,000 mark as far as vessels lost. Human loss is really hard to tell. In the early days when there was steam-powered passenger ships or wooden ships that were burning wood on the ship, they caught fire and they may have crowded more passengers on than they were allowed. You get estimates on reports on those, and they say it's anywhere from 200 to 600 people on the ship. So I think if you're guessing loss of life, it's going to be just that, I guess.
And why are some of these undetected for so long?
The shipwrecks?
Yes.
A couple of things. So there's either misinformation that's out about them, kind of like this F.J. King. The captain communicated wrong information about where a ship was abandoned. And so decades of people looking for it as a hobby were looking in the wrong place. Some of them are covered by sand. And we have a lot of sand movement that happens along our coast, and it's cyclical. So there's many years when the sand is in and it's covering up the shipwrecks. And then the next year, it'll be scoured out. We also have big storms that are hitting, and we have people who are being more vigilant about going out and reporting shipwrecks. I have a woman who I worked with a couple of years ago who's a power parachutist.
What's
and
that?
it's like a lawnmower, it looks like. It has a great big airboat fan on the back of it, and they have a canopy over the top. She flies up and down the coast at Two Rivers, Wisconsin, whenever she can. Every time that she can get up, she flies along and she finds great peace flying that stretch of lake. She would go up after storms and she would start seeing changes in the landscape. And these were shipwrecks that had been exposed, and she was able to call us and we were able to get in and survey them. Were these things exposed before? Probably. Did people understand that they needed to report them? Maybe not. Why weren't they found before? You used to have, every fishing boat would have a bottom sounder to tell you what depth you're in and whatever. Now almost every fishing boat has side scan sonar. So you're able to look out 60 to 100 feet on either side of your boat. You're able to see bottom contouring, and that's allowing shipwrecks to be found too.
Tamara, how and when did you first start exploring shipwrecks and thinking this might become your profession?
So I have a very strange story. It's definitely not a straight line course. I didn't know that I wanted to be an underwater archaeologist. I didn't even know it was a thing. I begged to dive all through high school, and my dad kept pushing it down the road thinking I'd forget about it. And I took a class in college, and I loved it so much. I went to school here at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And we're on the cusp of the Great Lakes. We're an hour away from Lake Michigan. At that point, you could buy a 10-punch pass on one of the dive boats and go out of Milwaukee on Wednesday nights for discounted rates. And this was in the late 80s. And the clarity of the water was so much different than it is now. Now we have zebra and quagga mussels, which have really made you be able to see from one end of the shipwreck to the other.
So it was much more turbid.
You could barely see the hand out in front of your face.
Wow.
I ended up swimming into the cargo hold of a ship called the Prince Willem, and then figured out I was in there. So I stopped wreck diving for about 5 years. And then I started volunteering here at the State Historical Society. And I kind of figured out over this time, because my degree background is in science, and I have a master's degree in genetics. And I decided, I really like working underwater. I like the challenge of it. So I was going to do anything that I could to figure out how to do that.
What do you mean you like the challenge of it? What sorts of challenges are associated?
Think of anything that you can do on the surface in dry air and then try doing it underwater. It's like 10 times hard. There's always a strategy to it. Yeah, if you're hammering something, you'll ricochet yourself back. So you have to think about the physics of it, also the physiology of your body and how deep you can go, how you go about executing a dive that's deep. I mean, here in our program, we can dive to over 300 feet deep, but we tend not to. It becomes this sort of win-lose, profit-loss type of thing. How much data are you going to gain for how much time you have to spend in the water and invest just doing decompression? So we end up using robotics and use remote sensing to be able to understand what the archaeological site looks like on the bottom.
So then you were saying then you made it to...
I got here at a transitional period. So I was volunteering to work on archaeological projects. And about 22 years ago, our office cleared out. Everyone went to work for the federal government. And so the state archaeologist said, well, you know what, you did the work on this. You're part of the team.
And they invited her to become a maritime archaeologist.
I love it. I love learning something new every day. So even though I had no idea this was something that even was an option for me, I'm glad I kind of fell into it.
Why is the work important? And what types of information are we able to learn from these wrecks?
These are time capsules, right? So when they went down, they took everything that was aboard the ship, what people would have carried, what the crew would have brought with them. We can learn about the cargoes that were being transported. But what I think is really cool is to learn about shipbuilding, because you may think that there are blueprints out there. There aren't. This was a trade that was learned through apprenticeship, and you developed your own techniques for building. There were certainly some rules that you needed to abide by, but every shipbuilder had a different way of constructing these vessels, and they had adaptations that they made. Now, if you see enough shipwrecks by a single builder, you can also understand how they changed their thinking over the period of their career.
And tell me about the Great Lakes as a region for studying shipwrecks. You mentioned a number of 6,000 wrecks. Why are the Great Lakes such a rich repository of shipwrecks?
We're on a huge water highway.
In the mid-19th century, the upper Midwest was a remote place.
So before there were roads and before there were rail networks here, the easiest way to get here, a place that was the Western frontier at a time, was by water. And so we have this huge influx of immigrants that come in and populate our cities and go. Yeah, it's the Midwest, and then go out and cut down the forests and establish farms. And then we have grain that's being grown there. And Milwaukee and Chicago, for a period of time, were the largest grain exporters of the world. And so ships were coming and going here for a period of 20 years or so, taking grain out to feed these hungry markets on the East Coast. So it's this transportation hub that exists here and then develops and evolves over time. When the rails came here, they decided that Lake Michigan was too hard to cross. And so they developed a whole system of ships where they could roll whole sets of rail cars onto the ships and keep on the train schedule to come across the lakes.
Just the sheer number of vessels, should I assume that that meant that some proportion of them were going to sink, and that's what led to the shipwrecks? Or are there other reasons? Why have the Great Lakes become such a place that have so many wrecks?
Well, we're out on the Great Lakes now. We have GPS and we have nautical charts, which are being populated and updated all the time. And they didn't have that. The other thing is the intensity of storms. On the Great Lakes, we have more chop and higher intensity of these waves because of it. And so these are different conditions than you would have on the ocean.
And when it comes to underwater archaeology, Tamara says there are other major differences between oceans and lakes.
We have invasive species. We have quagga mussels and zebra mussels that populate our wrecks, which clean our water, right? We don't have the marine life that you would have in the ocean, or teredo worms that would break down the wood.
Oh. Teredo worms are also known as naval shipworms, and they're not worms at all. They're actually bivalves, a type of mollusk that thrive in saltwater and particularly love to dine on rotten wood, and they're not found in the Great Lakes.
So when we look at shipwrecks, they may have collapsed and look like puzzle pieces on the bottom, but you can see the construction features. You're not just looking for piles of nails because the wood has all broken down like you would have on the ocean. The rate of decomposition does not happen as quickly here in the lakes. You've got cold water, you've got fresh water, and in a lot of cases, especially when they're deep, you have low oxygen levels, which again decrease this degradation of the shipwreck. And we don't have sharks. And I don't have to wash my gear after every dive and worry about it deteriorating because it is fresh water here. But it's cold, and then we also have ice, a lot of ice here. Sometimes large portions of the lakes are frozen over, and those ice shoves also do damage to the shipwrecks that are up near shore.
Tell me about what you're going down there with, what you're wearing, and then what do you see once you get down there? You've described this a little bit, but I wonder if you can just put it all together for me to help me imagine it.
We wear dry suits, so we're entirely covered from head to toe. Underneath those dry suits, we wear a thick undergarment, and then under that, we wear a heated vest. So it works off of batteries and a remote control, so you can bump up the heat as you start getting colder.
Ooh, that sounds cozy.
Yeah. I personally don't even wear a wet hood. I have a dry hood so my hair doesn't get wet. And then it's sealed on my face, and then over that I'll wear just a standard scuba diving mask. My hands are covered as well, so I have dry gloves that I put on there so they don't get wet either. On my feet, standard fins. They're a little bit bigger because they have to go over the dry suit and the socks and everything that I wear underneath that. So on a good day, when everything's working right, I don't get wet at all, except for maybe these little parts under my cheeks here. That's the only part that's going to have any kind of exposure.
And this is because the water's so cold.
Yeah, it helps. You dress for the depth that you're going to be diving. So in some cases in the later summer, we have thermoclines that set up, but the bottom is usually about 40 degrees and sometimes a little bit cooler than that. And then on our back, we wear a rebreather. So it's a recirculating device. It has a scrubber material that's inside. So as you exhale carbon dioxide. It goes in through the scrubber, which gets rid of that, and then it injects oxygen back in. The reaction produces heat, so it does warm you up a little bit also. But the important part of this is that it allows us to stay down for 4 hours.
Oh my
So the
goodness.
chemical reaction works 4 hours, so I can stay down up to that. Because if I was only in for a half an hour, think about all the money that it takes to get me to the field, to get my boat there, to get all the people that are helping me out there also. And then we're only on the bottom for a half an hour because we've got a scuba tank. So this allows us to efficiently do our job.
All right, so we're suited up. Let's dive in.
When we go down, you look at the shipwreck, if it's a new shipwreck, laid out in front of you, and you kind of look at it like CSI, like how do you reconstruct this crime scene? Well, it's the scene of an accident, and you see if there's any clues. In some cases, we know the name of the ship because the people that have found it had been looking for that. They'd done the research, and a lot of the features fit that. But in some cases, we don't know the name. So we need to know what type of vessel it was. So there's a couple different classes of vessels that are common here on the Great Lakes. You can have a sailing vessel or steamer, and then what kind of hull does it have? And then you can go back to a database and you can narrow down what was lost in this area, what type of hull was it, what information do we have? Is there any of the cargo that remains? Can we put that also with it and decide what this ship likely is? Most of the wooden sailing ships that we're looking at are about 100 to 150 feet in length. And on a good day, you can see from bow to stern. And so the other thing we look for is evidence of cultural items. We try to take pictures of them. Divers like to, unfortunately, pick things up out of the sediment and then put them places and take pictures of them, and that loses some of the context for archaeologists. So we want to look at these things pre-contact to be able to understand where everything was when it started. So we don't remove anything. That's kind of a practice in our office. We don't bring it up, even if it's really cool, we don't bring it up for a museum. It stays down there, and we try to use it to tell the story and educate people that may go to visit it, either, again, by diving, but a lot of these are in shallow water. So we have people that are kayaking, and we have people that are stand-up paddleboarding over the top of some of these shipwreck sites, and we want them to be able to interpret it too. We want it to be as new or like new when they discover it too.
That's incredible. Do you ever find skeletal remains?
Yeah, we have to be respectful that in some cases, these places are not just where people worked, but they died. And their remains are part of the archaeological site. And when we do discover human remains, we back away. We make sure that we're putting all the laws in place. We do have burial laws here in the state of Wisconsin that do protect burial sites like this from disturbance. And we make sure that every effort's given to give these resources the full protection under the law.
Do you and your team have a set of hand signals or gestures when you're swimming along these wrecks?
Sure. Most of the time, honestly, we're working independently. So we'll be given a certain area of the ship to be working. And a lot of times it's just, I'm ready to go up.
Which is a thumbs up.
So like, or I'm cold and I got to go up, or there's something that's broken. So we'll do that and then try to explain what it is. Hand signals are kind of the basic ones. We don't try to like sign anything. We have a slate that we take down with us, which has kind of like write in the rain paper on it, and it's a Mylar sheet, and we'll just write down what you're thinking.
Tamara, have you ever had any close calls down there?
No, bad things happen, but we train for that. We don't leave it so that there's opportunity for there to be scary situations. We train and we plan, and we anticipate, and everyone is there for everyone else. So if you are in a bad situation, if you communicate what it is, you're likely to be taken care of by a multitude of people.
So what if you're out on one of the Great Lakes, just minding your own business, fishing or paddling or diving for fun, and you stumble upon what looks like a shipwreck? What do you do? Tamara says calling her office's tip line is one way to go.
We've been putting a lot of information out to the media and on our websites about how to report directly to us. We have an email address, and that comes to the state archaeologist, which is disseminated to our office. But what's weird is that a lot of people find me on Facebook and will just send me a message. You know, my information is kind of out there. They'll call me on my personal number. And so I work on Sundays. I know I'm a state government worker, but I do work on Sundays. And
you mean like if a call comes in,
if
there's
it came
a wreck,
in on a Sunday, and it tends to come in on Saturdays or Sundays. Yeah.
And what, you'll field it, or you'll go out and see the wreck?
I'll field it.
Yeah.
We're state government, so we're on a limited budget. We do have some money set aside for being able to respond to reported discoveries. That's usually the first step. If we're going to be able to do a full survey of the shipwreck, we sometimes need to get gifts or grant funding to be able to accommodate that. I usually don't go on the same day, like throw my stuff in the back of the car and drive,
Yeah,
you know,
it is
6
the
hours
weekend
across the
after
state
all.
to go do that. That's a little bit too much to ask. And I do want to have somebody else to go with me. There's a little planning that needs to go in. We need to pick up the boat. And I have a coworker named Kendra, see if she can get somebody to watch her kids. There's usually 3 or 4 of us that need to get together to be able to do this work.
Now, not every boat that you found is one of these giant ships. Can you tell me about some of these other vessels that you've helped to unearth?
I came into this as a diver, so I still like to just go diving
Yeah.
recreationally. And a few years ago in 2021, I had asked one of the girls from the dive shop named Mallory Draw to go on a dive with me out in Lake Mendota, which is right behind my house. We went along an area of the lake that there's a kind of a steep drop off, and there's a lot of fish that are there. And if there's a lot of fish, there's a lot of fishermen. So there's trash and fishing poles and all kinds of garbage. And so we scoot along, pick up some garbage. And where she stopped was the exposed end of a dugout canoe.
A dugout canoe is a giant hollowed-out log, one of the oldest types of boats known to human history.
And so I got out my Write in the Rain notebook again, and I wrote, "Hey, that's a dugout canoe." And she said, "Yeah, but I need to turn around and go back to the boat because I'm halfway through my air supply."
Whoa.
So back to the boat, and I said, "Hey, let's grab another tank and come back out here. I think we can find it again. Let's make sure it's not just a log that I think is a dugout canoe." And now that we've gone back out to that area, we're finding more and more dugout canoes, and the oldest one is almost 5,000 years old.
Get out of here. Who made these canoes?
So here in Wisconsin, there's a number of designated tribes that are here. This is the native land of the Ho-Chunk Nation. So we've been working with the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer of the Ho-Chunk, Bill Quackenbush. And we've also been working with Tribal Historic Preservation officers from across the state. It was probably a common ancestor amongst all of these tribes, but this is their native territory. The first canoe was 1,200 years old. It looked great. It was in really pristine shape, so much that I placed a bet that it was a Boy Scout canoe that been left in the lake or something. Turned out to be 1,200 years old, which, you know, I was shocked. And then the next year we found a 3,000 and a 2,000-year-old one just down from it.
In that same lake?
Yeah. I work with shipwrecks mostly, so just not the same quality as like a 1,200-year-old piece of wood. Feels like a bagel. It's soft in the middle and kind of got a shell on the outside. But when you get to a 3,000-year-old canoe or even a 4,000, it's more like wet cardboard. So there's hardly any cellular structure.
In this special case, Tamara's job did involve bringing a boat up out of the water. 2, actually. Her office consulted with a consortium of local tribes, and together they decided to excavate and recover the 1,200-year-old canoe and the 3,000-year-old canoe. Both are currently being restored for future display at the forthcoming Wisconsin History Center. All the other dugout canoes found in that area will be documented, but left where they are.
So we brought the 3,000-year-old canoe up. It came up in fragmentary pieces, but the conservator that we've hired has said that she'll be able to put it back together as long as we remembered where all the pieces went, and we recorded that.
It's remarkable to think about how long the human relationship with water and vehicles that can traverse water goes back.
Yeah, not only for transportation, but recreation and fishing. And now we've found so many of these. Now you ask the question, why are they all in this spot? Like, why are all these canoes parked here? And understand how that connects to maybe a larger transportation network. So maybe this is where they left their canoes and they got out and started accessing the Indian Trail Network to see important cultural sites that were elsewhere around our communities.
Tamara, will there be a point at which there are no more shipwrecks left to find?
Oh, I don't know if all of them will uncover their secrets ever. In a lot of cases, you have to wait for them to be exposed. Some of them are under beaches, and some of them are in very deep water. And it takes gas money and fuel to go out there to go and look for them. Not only your time, there probably is a finite number, but I don't know that all of them will be located.
What a feeling to know that you have these treasures, some of which you've found, some of which remain to be found, and even those that you have found still have more mysteries kind of lurking within, and all of it is just a short dive away for you.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool opportunity. Even if you've seen the shipwreck before, there's always something new, something that's changed, or something that you see for the first time because you're looking at it with fresh perspective.
Tamara, thank you so much for this conversation and for helping me understand what's lying beneath the Great Lakes and why it matters.
Oh, thanks for having me.
To read more about shipwrecks on the Great Lakes and the 50th anniversary of the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald, visit SmithsonianMag.com. We'll put a link in our show notes. On the next episode of There's More to That, we'll learn about space junk, how all those satellites and remnants of space travel float above the planet until they fall back to Earth. If you like There's More to That, consider leaving us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, the iHeartRadio app, or wherever you get your podcasts. There's More to That is a production of Smithsonian Magazine and PRX Productions. From the magazine, our team is me, Debra Rosenberg, and Brian Wolly. From PRX, our team is Ali Budner, Cleo Levin, Genevieve Sponsler, Sandra Lopez-Monsalve, and Edwin Ochoa. The executive producer of PRX Productions is Jocelyn Gonzales. Our episode artwork is by Emily Lankowitz. Fact-checking by Stephanie Abramson. I'm Ari Daniel. Thanks for listening. It sounds like a real adventure.
Yeah, I feel like I live in a game sometimes. So someone reports a shipwreck. What do?
What would the title of your game be?
So this is funny because there actually is a game about my life. And it's called Legend of the Lost Emerald.
Ooh.
And it's for 4th grade education. So you get to be an underwater archaeologist. And the whole end of the game is trying to vindicate your grandfather whose ship went down, which was called the Emerald. So it's it's kind of fun, but my life is a little bit more complicated than that. But the 4th grade level of my life is that. So
I love that.